Ketimbang bekas-bekas Perdana Menteri sebelum ini, ramai rakyat bersetuju dan mengatakan bahawa the best PMS sekarang ini adalah Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim. Kita tidak boleh nafikan sumbangan-sumbangan Perdana Menteri sebelum ini, tapi hari ini adalah zamannya Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim menjawat jawatan sebagai Perdana Menteri, dan kita boleh lihat beliau begitu dekat dengan rakyat, begitu memahami kepayahan kesusahan rakyat Sabah semua. Dan bantuan juga yang diberikan adalah antara yang tertinggi diberikan kepada rakyat ketimbang dengan bekas-bekas Perdana Menteri sebelum ini. Termasuklah geran khas kepada Sabah. Kalau sebelum ini kerajaan BN kerajaan Perikatan geran khas Sabah hanyalah tertinggi setakat 54 juta. Tetapi sudah berapa tahun, masuk 3 tahun, dan belanjawan yang memasuki untuk tahun hadapan, kita boleh nampak bagaimana geran khas untuk Sabah itu dinaikkan menjadi 600 juta ringgit dan 6.9 bilion untuk pembangunan di dalam negara kita, di Sabah khususnya. Tahniah terbaik daripada Perdana Menteri. Jadi dalam masa yang sama juga saya ingin membawakan Anda sahabat semua untuk bersama-sama dengan saya mendengar dalam satu Ucaptama Forum Ilmu PNB 2025 yang diucapkan sendiri oleh Perdana Menteri kita dengan sesi soal jawab. Wow, alright. Jadi tanpa membuang masa, ayo kita tonton bersama video ini.
Alhamdulillah kita mengucapkan kesyukuran kepada Allah Taala kerana dapat bersama-sama dengan kumpulan dan keluarga PNB keseluruhannya dalam knowledge forum ini yang saya kira penting untuk menentukan kita menetapkan arah yang lebih dan seluruh keluarga PNB, semua tokoh-tokoh korporat besar pada hari ini yang tentunya lebih arif daripada saya tentang pengurusan syarikat dan badan korporat. Tapi izinkan saya memulakan dengan menyatakan bahawa sekiranya negara ini mahu memacu pertumbuhan dan menetapkan satu kedudukan yang lebih baik, dia tidak mampu mengekalkan kaedah atau dasar lama. Ada beberapa yang positif boleh kita teruskan, tetapi perubahan itu penting. Perubahan itu tidak terletak pada dasar atau yang menggerunkan. Umpamanya pada satu ketika kita bicara soal paradigm shift. Kemudian kita bicara tentang pelbagai wawasan. Kemudian kita bicara soal reform. Dan sekarang kita juga menekankan maksud transformasi. Semua itu penting. Tetapi ujiannya kepada PNB dan kepada negara adalah bagaimana memaknai dalam bentuk pelaksanaannya. Saya beri contoh. So, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I was alluding to the fact that whilst the issues of paradigm shift or reform or transformation are critical in charting the new course for a society, of course, the experts in the global order, I will confine to Malaysia, but these terms are at times devoid of meaning unless it is well understood. And there are programs introduced to ensure that it is effectively executed. I give an example. I gave an example in the last few years about paradigm shift. I was then in the government. Huge interest in paradigm shift. And that includes, of course, paperless, because of the introduction of the computer in the system. But you know the result. In some areas, it's exciting. successful, but in most areas, it is not only paperless, but paperless, and in many occasions, paper more. So the term paradigm shift is certainly not what Thomas Kuhn referred to in his great works, because preparedness to undertake phenomenal, substantive change, both in terms of policies, directions, and in the manner we execute these programs. Similarly, now when we talk about transformation, it is critical. When Schumpeter talks about the gale of creative destruction, aftermath of a decaying order, economic order, he made a clear reference that use these things fall apart, the center cannot hold, to borrow Yeats' dictum. But there must be a clarity in policies, in policy direction, and number two, a team, both the political leadership, the public servants, the private sector, the executives, technocrats, who are able to absorb this sentiment and be convinced that in order to propel our economy, champion the cause of this nation and also the direction, there must be this preparedness to undertake the change. But it's easier said than done, because my limited experience, you are actually facing this strong resistance. There was an old sociological theory about propensity to change, I think McLaren, I'm not too sure, about propensity to change and resistance to change. Our basic assumption is that resistance to change is probably from the traditional society, less educated. But from studies, you will find that oftentimes the resistance to change among the top elites, because it is a challenge to the way they are working, or the way they are squandering wealth, or the way they understand principles of governance. So let us remind ourselves the humility to acknowledge. I mean, bringing these top scholars to share with us the experience, to me, is very pertinent. We can't assume that we know everything. We are living in the post-normal times. Chaos, complexity, contradictions we talk about. We are talking about change, phenomenal, happening in that term called simultaneity. Simultaneously, too many places, too many complexities. But you also realize that people are somewhat confident and settled with the manner they act and devise policies. So I certainly am happy that PNB, Ramai, is continuing this tradition of scholarship like Khazanah did with the mega trends, to try and reflect, understand new challenges, and admitting with all humility that there are limitations and that we need to explore new ideas, new directions, new policies, and learn from the experiences of others in order to enhance our capabilities. So let us take this very seriously. Whatever we can absorb, share with the community. Because, again, when we talk about change, my task is, of course, to start with governance. How do you expect to understand and execute this transformation if we are still tied to the issue of endemic corruption and abuse of power? And to challenge the political and social elite or business elite that used to squander with impunity is, of course, not an easy task, because you are dealing with people with influence, with funds, with international networking, with the social media and the media and various instruments of government. You wouldn't be surprised some in the judiciary or in the prosecution or in these established agencies and corporate players like maybe some of you. But this is a stark reality that we face. That is why you see in the first year we were struggling. People have to understand we have a problem with huge debts. We have to embark on a new policy. We have to restructure somewhat the economy. Okay, we talk about transformation with AI, digital, but we still need to educate masses. I mean, MADANI is one. To understand the basics about the importance of investments and savings, and to educate the masses. You talk about AI and digital, but you know the problem. One is disconnect. Connectivity, whether we can ensure that those in the privileged areas get the full access and connectivity as compared to those in the rural heartland and the urban poor. No sane society with the correct philosophy and understanding about humanity and truth and justice and compassion can tolerate a system that can propel economic growth but condone endemic corruption and endemic or abject grinding poverty in our midst. So these basic issues that we have to address. I must still thank you to Rakyat, to Rahman and the colleagues, both in PNB and Khazanah and the rest, have been extremely supportive and helpful. I do think we could achieve what we have thus far with the total support and commitment. But again, I reiterate the point that we must start with governance. And then if we can clean the mess, then I think these policies can be well absorbed and we can execute it effectively. I made a surprise announcement in the last fortnight's budget that due to effective enforcement by the Anti-Corruption Commission, the police, the tax agencies, we were able to get back 15.5 billion ringgit in 2 years. Leakages, smuggling funds, racketeers, syndicates. But my question is, how is it that we could condone and tolerate this rubbish for decades? And you can follow the debate in Parliament, hardly any support. I mean, except from the backbenchers, of course, but then from the opposition, it's being ridiculed. I thought it's mind-boggling. How is it that when the government attempt to stop this plundering of national wealth, we can't get this national consensus to proceed with such conviction and determination? But let me assure you that we will continue. Alhamdulillah, impressive results. Then the basic question arises. I happen to be a Minister of Finance. We have a problem, shortage of funds. Of course, we get PNB, Khazanah to help out with the Sekolah Madani, Sejati Madani, fair. But the option from economics is tax. But my question is a conscience. It's a question of conscience. Why must you tax? Because you need revenue. But why make you assume that the revenue that you have collected thus far is well spent and there are no leakages? Now we realize that the leakages for the last 2 years have gone to 15 billion ringgit. Now why then tax? So I'm not suggesting that we will not ever tax. We will have to. But what I'm suggesting is, what I'm stressing is, get our house in order. I gave an example, for example, for the last decades, we have allocated 1.1 billion ringgit annually just to support the price of chicken. Now, supporting the price of chicken actually is benefiting the cartels. Now, 2 years back, I said, no. Call the players, the industry players, and tell them we will not. Not at their expense. They will not lose. But they cannot get funds from the government when they already had profits. So we stopped that 2 years ago. So we save 1.1 billion ringgit. Now, why can't this simple policy be implemented? And such, the other is, of course, the subsidy rationalization. Electricity, we earn between 4 to 6 billion ringgit. Now, recently, RON 95. All leaders, all governments, all economists say or suggest that you must have the courage to implement that. Now we subsidize everybody up to 20, 30 billion a year. Malaysians, foreigners, they're very rich. So we introduced the RON 95. And in order to appease the general public, I reduced the price for Malaysians, and still we save between 2.5 to 3 billion ringgit. So, you see, it is in terms of transformation, okay, Raman, it's transformative. But don't envy me, because it requires courage, it requires this broad consensus in the cabinet, and then effective communications. So I would hope that PNB Khazanah will help us in this. Where the policy is right, you need also to communicate effectively, because without good governance, I don't think the other policies will be able to work. Now, in the next few days, we'll have the ASEAN Plus Plus. We'll have Donald Trump, Lee Chiang, Modi, and Prime Ministers of 18 countries. Thus far, I must thank the various ministries, security forces, who have been extremely helpful. And of course, I will need your contribution and expertise to make sure that we're able to handle this well. It's not easy. I was whispering to Datuk Rahman. He says, is Trump coming? I said, yes, on 26. Can you help stand in for me for a while? So, again, we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May we achieve good results in this, because ASEAN, under our stewardship, has this motto of inclusivity and sustainability, has embarked on the issue of connectivity in the region and the power grid. And thank you again to PNB for your participation, particularly KIGIP, and TNB and Petronas, of course, for this power grid from Vietnam to Peninsula Malaya to Singapore, and again Sarawak to Peninsula to Sabah, the Philippines, and Indonesia. So at least we are able to achieve the two main priorities. But again, within ASEAN, we have been strong in our advocacy in terms of good governance, in terms of ensuring that people benefit through these sort of regional arrangements. It's not an MAC. You know what an MAC is? It's not a mutual admiration club where we meet and start praising one another. But here, I think we must set a new tradition. We meet and stress on some important issues policies, directions, and of course through this transformative framework. Jadi sekali lagi saya ucap terima kasih kepada saudara. Saya telah dengar Raja Asyad tadi, saya tak terbaca saya punya teks. Dan saya fikir wajarlah saya lontarkan sedikit pandangan. Pertama, menyatakan perlunya transformasi untuk menjamin kelangsungan, kelestarian dan peningkatan keupayaan negara kita dari segi martabat, harakat dan darjat. Dan keduanya membicarakan bahawa prasyaratnya ialah tata kelola pemerintahan yang harus terima secara tawaduk kelemahan-kelemahan dan perbaiki kebobrokan dalam sistem. Dan ini tidak mudah kerana kekuatan kelompok yang biasa dengan amalan lama yang menguntungkan mereka pribadi, keluarga dan kroni tidak tentu senang menerimanya. Sebab itu sudah lihat dari pandangan dari tokoh-tokoh besar dulunya yang merasa begitu tercabar dan akan ambil apa saja langkah yang mungkin untuk menggagalkan rencana kita. Semoga Allah Taala memberkati dan merestui usaha kita. Tahniah sekali lagi kepada PNB dalam menjayakan Knowledge Forum.
Terima kasih Kalung Budi. Temukan untuk Datuk Seri. Dipersilakan untuk mengambil tempat. This is the hot seat and for our in conversation.
Why must you choose to ask a difficult question for a start? Very complex.
You know me.
Well, I try to articulate some of these issues and in the rethinking of ourselves. You see, again, humility to acknowledge new challenges, that there are new challenges that you are not able to grasp fully unless you prepared to learn. And that's why this literacy, cultural literacy, political literacy, and economic or literacy is to me is vital. And critical thinking is important. That's why we are trying to change. The transformation must begin in schools. It's not just rote learning, but also to allow students to participate and think and critically evaluate and assess. So, doing post-normal times connote, again, as I alluded to earlier, chaos, complexity, and contradictions. Well, there has been chaos and contradictions in the Roman period, the Greek period, fair. But the complexity and the contradictions is happening probably too prevalent, pervasive, in too many areas at the same time. That's why they popularized the term simultaneity. Everything simultaneous happening. Now, so the humility to accept, for example, people from my generation, energy transition is new, digital transformation, new AI is new. So the humility to acknowledge that there are certain issues that we have to address, but the fundamental, the core issues that
our colleagues at the enemy must also accept the fact is that the fundamental issue of justice, about compassion, about marginalized societies, these core issues must be addressed. So although you talk about post-normal times, address new issues, global challenges, tariff introduction, which is impacting our society and our economy, the fundamental issues must be addressed. After all, we are talking about transformation for whom? For a country, yes, for whom? For human beings. Now, what are human beings without values, without ethics, without understanding a sense of justice, and tolerate and condone exploitation or marginalization societies, or preach hatred towards other races or other creeds or other religions? These are challenges here, very relevant. And you must acknowledge again, it's not an easy matter. In the West, with all the sophistication of new scholarship and learning, intellectual culture and technology, there's a rise of racism. There's neo-Nazism. There's in the far right. You see how they treat the Palestinians in Gaza. I mean, even after this sort of a temporary, hopefully, inshallah, successful ceasefire, how they then the case of the Israeli hostages, and the Palestinians by the thousands of their semi-slaves. That is therefore, to me, it's quite sickening. So whilst we talk about transformation into the global AI center, you must not forget the core values in this new challenge of times.
I understand. Thank you, Prime Minister. In order for Malaysia to reimagine itself, it's not really two choices, I would think. Ride the wave of change or be swept up on it. You chose, obviously, the former. Are people expecting miracles from you? Because transformation in any shape or form takes time. It takes the support of the Rakyat. It takes the support of groups like people in here as well. And it's easy to pass policies, Prime Minister, but it's very hard to have them executed.
Very pertinent remark, because people expect, because there is this wave of high expectations. But you must also learn from history. You know, what was the motto of the French Revolution? Égalité, fraternité. Liberty. But from all studies, 10 years after that revolution, including after the reign of terror, Robespierre, Jacobins, all sort of idealism, extreme demands, devouring many of his children in the process. 10 years after that, the plight of the farmers remains somewhat insane. So the challenge is not this major pronouncement of platitudes, but to ensure effective implementation. Now, all independence movements from, say, Nehru's three-sweet destiny that India will change in terms of solving the problem of basic of poverty and ensuring freedom, or cyclonic democratic revolution in Pakistan by Jinnah. But finally, the judgment is how you are able to execute and people will see the results. So there are two poles, internal dynamics even within our coalition. Forces want immediate change, and forces who are somewhat resistant to change. So you have to navigate. You are not working in a vacuum. If you go ahead with those who have no patience except for immediate, effective change and reform or transformation, things will fall. Things cannot hold. Things will, paraphrase WBD, things fall apart. The center cannot hold. You can't be reminded. Western European experience post Cold War. The advantage of the time. Some chose to have immediate reform, failed. Some too slow, also failed. To navigate mind is tough. It's a major challenge. But again, we have set this. There's no turning back. We're going to do it wisely. As my Sheikh told me recently, sabar, patience, hikmah, wisdom. Tetap, you must still stay the course. Never mind those who are patient, because if they want to change, they don't care. Because they're completely devoid of understanding of political play, which we have to acknowledge. Micro-relation, for example, micro-relation is the micro-relation. Of course, this whole Anwar, national code, BS, RS. And of course, our Malaysia PPE, the DAP, and Aman. So, the process to build that consensus and consultation is pertinent. But what is the core principle? Governance, no compromise. Only you need to think it that. I mean, step by step. Then, through governance and some major economic policy changes that follows through. And the reform which includes health, public health, education, this is getting pertinent. That we will proceed. Inshallah, we will prevail.
I'm glad you brought up the fact about education, Prime Minister, because Gen Z is now the leaders of the digital age, and they are forced to reckon with. They have their own minds these days, not like when you and I were children. Right? It's a different ball game now. How do you win their support for the young people in this room?
Well, you should ask them. But anyway, leaders, teachers, and parents must learn how to engage. How I was brought up is different from how my children and among grandchildren I can see this change. When I was growing up, one word from my dad is done. Have your haircut. Done. It will be done the same day. Haircut. Now, my children say, Baba, okay, we're done. It takes 3 days. My grandchildren say, why is it necessary? I thought, I saw old photographs and somewhat longer hair. But does it involve character building? There are 101 questions and it's not done. So, well, probably some core rules you have to follow, right? But otherwise, this sort of engagement is important. I think they mature faster. Our challenge is to ensure that they have also the environmental values, because they mature in the sense they understanding society, the access to new technology, social media, but there are also some harmful elements that a country government must provide some sort of guidance in terms of the lack of ethics and values. That is the MADANI framework that I've been trying to promote strongly. Modernity, yes, new technology, yes, everything that is required to ensure the necessity, yes. But again, we need to be reminded that we are dealing with societies, with human beings, and for multiracial, multicultural society like ours, kids must be given that sort of education that we are karamah inside that Allah has exalted the children of Adam, and it is not for us to then show prejudice or discrimination.
Prime Minister, Setuju was mentioning earlier as well, as part of this transformation theme, it's also a personal transformation for you. And of the heads of state I've been very lucky to have met with and talked with through the years, what they went through in their lives shaped how they thought and what they did. I'd like to ask you, Prime Minister, you have been through a lot, much more than most people have in their lifetime. What made you who you are today, not only as a man, but as now the leader of a country?
Well, the more prominent people with greater sacrifices than me, with all humility and acknowledge that they went through, they imprisoned them with too long, 10 years with too long. But anyway, I had to endure that. I made good use of it. Spent a lot of time in prayers, meditation, reading thousands of books in the 10 years. But what have I learned? I was then Deputy Prime Minister, so then Black Eye, and became the world, throughout the world. But I watched some young juvenile cases. The one incident that really affected me personally. I was walking with the guards. It was like public reading. Kafka, you know, it's like public enemy number one, all guards. I go to the, from the prison to the courtroom, there will only tanks or helicopter. Why is it necessary to portray that you're dealing with very dangerous terrorists or something? Anyway, once I was walking with the guards out to the car, to the court. I saw this young, the Black Eye. So I just needed the guards, can I just say hello? She says, okay, it's 1 or 2 minutes, but we don't want the scene by the CCTV, whatever. So I asked him, ni pasal apa? Why are you here? He said, sikit. I said, apa? He was reluctant to say, what happened? Why are you here? He said, sorry, I made a mistake. I said, what? I stole a pair of jeans. How long have you been here? 2 weeks. When it is right, I will go. Do you have a lawyer? No. Your parents come and say, yes, they came once, but they can't afford it. But this stole a pair of jeans. And a lot of jeans, the political elite, stole hundreds, if not billions, and they are promoted from that to 3 to 2. No, I know, I'm Prime Minister, be careful what I say. No, but, I mean, I'm a human being. How do you rationalize this? One young guy stole a pair of jeans, will stay there in money. Living at that poverty, no lawyers. And we have the system. The people, come on, don't, give me the credit that we don't know. You know for a fact how this system works. So what have I learned? I learned justice. But that's Malaysia. I was in this solitary confinement in the lockup, and about 20 yards away was the place where they had this cave of convicted fellows. And so at the time, probably once a fortnight, this came I would appeal the prison director. He said, please get out of it, go to the library, go anyway, but I can bear it here. Because if there are rape cases, yes, then okay. But many of them are just foreign workers who came here, sold their cows and goats, whatever, came here, exploited by the agents or the governments, and then went to court, and some of the magistrates, some the worst kind of what they studied in the university, they studied laws, but they didn't study justice, they studied technicalities of the law. And get sit and silence. Because they were all given maximum. If you go to a particular court, I still remember, if they happen to be sent to Kuala Lumpur, Baru court at that time, in the 2000. said, so what? I'm not saying they can be excused, okay? Detain them for a while, whatever. But I'm sure there's a range. But why must we impose maximum sentence? And so because of that, I came out of prison. Later on, became a member of Parliament. I really asked, I said, it's inhuman, it's barbaric to deal with this sort of system. And alhamdulillah, now we're done with Kenya. So, I'm not saying that we should allow foreign people to come and work, permit us. But we should treat human beings as human beings. So what have I learned? I learned. I've talked about freedom, justice all my life. But you have to understand why is it so important to be free, to be just, to have compassion, to be fair, to accept. So Allah tested me. This trial and tribulation is not easy. It's tough for me, Azizah, and the children and many friends. But now that I'm here, Prime Minister, what have I learned? I learned. What do I want to do? I want to do the best so that no one should be treated that manner. May Allah help us.
So you would say, that is an amazing story, Prime Minister. So you would say really that incarceration really made you the leader you are today, in short.
I wouldn't choose that. I want the younger generation to be as as passionate without needing to go to jail to learn. My case is unfortunate. I had to do that and be all that, but I think all for a reason. And that's why I'm saying that I'm not bitter. People say, oh, I'm not bitter. No. But you continue. Of course I'm tough. You know what I mean? It's okay, it's done. If I'm bitter, I tell you, hundreds will be dismissed every sentence. Sometimes I do how I wish I'm a dictator. But it is wrong. You have a due process. And you have to move on. I mean, you are not okay. You like to hear the story, but you're not interested in what happened. You want to know about your future, your family's future, your children's future. What is there for the country? So let us work together. No. Yes, I've learned this lesson. I share with you. But what is important to my mind is how we then commit ourselves to improve the welfare of this country. Enough of this racism, corruption, injustice, and try our level best to affect change. And again, as I said, change, if you move too fast, you think you are the smartest guy on earth. I have some colleagues like that. Nobody else is matter. I don't need to negotiate with others. I don't care about coalition. Then you don't govern. You don't care about coalition team. You don't govern. See? I think in Dutch, Sukarno used to say, like, Vox clamatis disorto, like crying in the desert. But I don't want that. I think we should use this opportunity to move. And I think, I don't know, Rahman here, Emil Faisal there, and Rashid are all monitoring this very closely. But I think we have the capacity. We have done it. We are able to do it. And many of you, I mean, the leading banks here, the leading companies, we can. You know that. It will make a difference with good governance. Now, have I interfered? Well, Khazanah, PNB, I happen to chair. Have I interfered in decisions? No. I said, yes, new technology. Yes, green technology. Yes, Bumiputra welfare. Yes, program for the poor. Yes, adopt schools. That's all. I don't interfere in terms of protecting personal interests. And to me, this is a remarkable change. And if I don't interfere, none of my cabinet colleagues should interfere. The commercial decision is entirely yours. Okay? Thank you.
Prime Minister, I just have 5 minutes on the clock with you, and I'd like to bring in the ASEAN forum that's coming up, and the fact that you also just confirmed that US President Trump will be attending. Bringing him here to Malaysia, was that all your hard work?
It's Malaysia, it's ASEAN. I think, and the policy, we use the term centrality. We are close to China. We are very strong with our neighbors in ASEAN. We work and maintain these traditional relations with the United States. We express some of our views in terms of some foreign policy differences, but we maintain the strong bond, friendship with the United States, huge investments, trade with Europe. And now we are embarking as a trading nation. We are pushing ahead, not only with Europe, Asia, and America, but also with Latin America and South Africa. That's why for the first time within ASEAN fraternity and framework, we're having Lula of Brazil and Ramaphosa of South Africa here.
Yes.
Of course, with Carney, Prime Minister of Canada. It's called ASEAN, but virtually the entire Asia is here. Representative EU, Canada, United States, Latin America, Brazil, and South Africa. So it's a very interesting experience.
And what will be your main message to US President Trump when he's here? Behind closed doors, of course.
No, I've done, well, we had exchanges phone call twice. He has been extremely cordial, very, very sportive. He listens quite well. And I think I want to make use of this opportunity, of course, to protect the interests of Malaysia in terms of trade, investments, but also to express some of my personal views on what I think will be good for Malaysia, for the United States, for the world, including the issues affecting, I of course commend him for the effort. Whatever you may say, whatever the reservations, you must commend the fact that Trump did a major service in stopping at least the bombings in Gaza. But our challenge, of course, to ensure that peace prevail and justice prevail, and ultimately the legitimate interests and aspirations of the Palestinians be given, be accorded their rights.
Right. A final question to you, Prime Minister. Would you like to have a glass of water first? All right. There are a lot of government-linked companies here, very senior people in this room. With the theme transformation, we've talked a lot about a variety of topics. As we leave this conversation, I'd like to ask you if there was one piece of advice you'd like to give the audience in the room, what would that be? What would you like them to leave this forum with?
It's time for them to give me advice, but anyway, they do give advice, but in the quiet, passing notes and giving suggestions. But I think we have introduced some policy shifts. For example, domestic investments through Gear Up, and they've been very forthcoming. And I've talked about, back to basics, understanding the entire purpose of the setup of PNB or Khazanah and the various institutions. I think remain true to the core aspirations and improve governance. And frankly, of course, it's my job to monitor, but I must say and commend them for the hard work and the commitment, and I'm proud of them to be associated with them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prime Minister, for your insights, your reflections, and I hope it's not another 20 years that we meet again. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, the Prime Minister of Malaysia.